Good evening, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order. And we'll start with the land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge that the ground on which we live is the traditional territory of Caldwell First Nation, of the Three Fires Confederacy, and the original people of Point Pelee and Pelee Island, and its surrounding lands and waters, and that of the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot peoples. We recognize and respect the First Nations who are stewards of the land and waters of Turtle Island and who have embraced this stewardship since time immemorial. We would also like to acknowledge the contributions of other nearby First Nation communities and all original people across Turtle Island. We will now have a moment of silent reflection, followed by the playing of our national anthem. Please stand for the playing of our national anthem. Okay, Council, if we can get an adoption of the agenda for March 12th, 2024, it be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor Desjardins, support by Councillor Burns. All in favor? And that is carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest? There being none, if we can get an adoption of the minutes from the meeting, the regular and closed meetings of Council held February 27th, 2024, be adopted as presented. Deputy Mayor Capata, Councillor Burns, all in favor? And that carries. Mayor's comments, just a few. Councillor Carrick is under the weather, and Councillor Richo Spagnolo is on a much-deserved family vacation for March break. So we'll start off by saying happy March break to those who have some time off. I know not all of us get that, but hopefully we'll have a few days. On February 28th, the town accepted 3 awards at the Festival Events Ontario Conference, where Councillor Desjardins and myself, as well as members from administration, were able to receive the top 100 festival and event in Ontario for the LaSalle Strawberry Festival. We were also rewarded with the best new event with a budget of $100,000 or less for the last call before fall. And to top it off, we were given the award of Municipality of the Year with a population under 50,000. So congratulations to everyone in the town of LaSalle, because we know it takes someone from every department to pull off all of these events. So thank you very much. This Monday is Monday with the Mayor, which is March 18th from 2 to 4 p.m. If you're unable to come during those hours, feel free to go online to fill out a form to either schedule a different time or have a phone call, whatever's easier. LaSalle Police Service Headquarters is now the official home of Windsor and Essex Crime Stoppers, the partner which enhances community safety. If you're aware of crime or wish to leave an honest tip, you can do so by calling the hotline at 1-800-222-8477. Our Sean Kenny's Animal Superpowers made with Lego bricks is still on at the Event Center from 1 to 9 p.m. this week for March break, and then we'll resume our regular hours. There's only 4 weeks remaining, so please don't miss out and come and visit and see what we're celebrating there. And the final thing is a congratulations. So back on March 8th, 1999, we took a chance on someone and he became the Director of Finance with the town of LaSalle. I know what I'm doing. 20 short years later, he was promoted to the CAO of the town of LaSalle, which was June 25th, 2019. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to congratulate our CAO, Mr. Militia, on 25 years with the town of LaSalle. So. And with that, we'll move on in the agenda. We have no public meetings in our hearings today, so we're going to go on to the presentations and delegations. With item 1, which is the Crossing View Development Subdivision, the request to designate certain lands as Class 4. So we're going to turn it over to our Director of Planning and Development, which is Ms. Beggs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of Council. As you recall, last council meeting, we reviewed the zoning bylaw amendment request that was brought forward for Crossing View Development. The draft plan of subdivision is highlighted there on the screen for reference. And Council at that meeting did endorse in principle the zoning bylaw request, subject to us coming back and bringing forward a report to designate Block 52 highlighted on the draft plan there as a Class 4 noise area under NPC 300 guidelines. And so that's what this report does tonight. It provides that designation, authorizes that designation for Block 52 under those requirements, and allows us to forward on that designation request to the MECP. Pursuant to Council's amended recommendation at the last meeting, we did have a meeting with the proponent and the owner of the adjacent industrial site next door. And we had some beneficial discussion at that meeting. We had a lot of back and forth between the developer and the owner of ProPower, as well as their consultants were at the meeting as well. And through that discussion, it was recognized that the developer was willing to, not only in addition to Block 52, they were also willing to designate additional areas within the plan of subdivision proposal, such as Block 48 and 51. As a Class 4 area, they were willing to change the Type E warning clause, some of the wording in the Type E warning clause to include the actual address for the property, as well as the word emissions in the warning clause itself. And then we're also changing the Type F warning clause to reflect the address, and then applying that Type F warning clause to those additional blocks, blocks 48 and 51. So tonight we are looking for support for that designation request, that the report be received, and that we have authorization to pass on that noise, Class 4 noise area designation to the MECP.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beggs. Members of Council, you have questions? Councillor Renner, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Your Worship. With Block 52, with this amendment, what would they be able to put on that property? What would be allowed? What could be developed there?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So Block 52 is going to be rezoned under an R2 zoning, I believe. R3 rather. So they're looking to do an apartment building or some medium to high density type land use at that location.
Okay. Would there be any type of appetite to look at the structure of that block? There's some sensitive area there where noise could be an issue, dirt could be an issue that's been brought to my attention. And I'm just wondering if there'd be any appetite to maybe reconfigure that block, or if that's something that could be discussed before we enter into this type of agreement.
So I think that the safeguards that are being put in place as a result of the stationary noise assessment that was completed, as well as the Class 4 designation that's being applied to Block 52, really do protect the sensitive land uses from the neighboring industry. Your question about whether or not there'd be an appetite to perhaps reconfigure the limits of Block 52 in terms of the land uses at that location really is a question for the proponent. The proponent is here this evening. I don't know if they'd be willing to come up and perhaps investigate or have a discussion about the configuration of Block 52 more in detail.
Thank you. You're more than welcome to. I don't want to put you on the spot either. So if you're not prepared to speak on it, we can also defer and allow you time to prepare if that's better.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess through you, yes, I feel as though I'm somewhat put on the spot, but I'm open to have been put on the spot before. So, and I think going back to that, and can I ask Gudrun, is that something also that could be done at the site plan level? Stage.
So what we're doing with the zoning is we are zoning the property in keeping with the draft plan of subdivision layout. So the zone lines will mimic the draft plan of subdivision. So if you're going to be changing what's on the screen, then we'll need to change those zone lines as well.
Okay, fair enough. And not to get too specific into it, to the planning process, but I'm not quite sure, and I've talked to Mr. Coulthard as well through the meeting that was set up, as well as before that, and trying to come up with something. And what we've put in place as far as the restrictions and that, as Gudrun has mentioned, should give him additional comfort as to protecting the sensitive area and nature of the property. Now, having said all that, I'm always open to looking at things. I think that we've made a very concerted effort to make sure that we are, that I am abiding by the guidelines and what my experts have told me is appropriate and proper for this area, and even gone so far as to go extra as far as the warning clauses and such that we put into the thought process in doing this development. So if I can go back to the specific question that you asked, which was, am I willing to change? I'm not exactly sure what he would like us to change as far as what it is that we're proposing.
So I think what we're looking at is we've had discussions regarding the D6 and the Class 4, and we'll be very honest with you, coming out of the last meeting, I think we all felt very overwhelmed trying to understand the differences. That's not a technical background any of us hold. So we did have a chance to really have a conversation with Mr. Coulthard and as well as administration to understand what can be done or what's been done or what they're asking. So you have, yes, followed the guidelines, and you have taken that step of going above and beyond with this, especially this new change that is tonight. I think what's being requested at this time is with Block 52, would you consider, instead of it being a medium density with residential properties, would you consider something more like Block 53, where it would be the commercial with, or alter parking or something, so that those residential units don't fall within that 70 meters, which he currently has set back around the rest of his property, except for that Block 52. So that's what has been asked of us to kind of understand and make sure that we're also protecting potential new residents, as well as we're obviously protecting your interest and Mr. Coulthard's. Councilor Renaud.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could just add, personally, when I look at the block, I'm not asking for you to change the entire block. Possibly move the border of the two adjoining blocks, possibly, or to even consider that if you're going to put an apartment building in there, maybe the sensitive area be the parking lot side of it. I don't know, what you had in mind. We can't really tell from this, but when I ask for the appetite, I guess my question is, is there something we could do creative with the parking lot or with those lines in order to just kind of push the people out of that sensitive area and just leave it to either parking lot or a different type of more compatible structure?
Thank you. Through Your Worship, I guess what I would have to look at in that case, again, it involves a number of things. If you're asking me to move the commercial into the medium density, then I have to somewhat now look at put planning aside, because I'm not a professional planner, I'm just going on the basis of what, the experts that I hire are saying, and I'm not sure where Mr. Coulthard is wanting this, other than if it's a personal thing, if it's a planning issue or whatever. But having said that, if I were to bring down the commercial into the medium density and change that around, I would also have to look at the viability of additional commercial in that area, weigh that out with what other commercial might be happening next on the other side of the other development that's proposed there. And again, bringing commercial that deep into a development is something also that I would have to look at, because obviously I want to make sure that when I put together a plan that it's done in ratios whereby I'm not worried about having too much commercial that might become vacant, that it's too deep into the development, that it's too far offsetting from the main arteries, et cetera. So I know the time and effort that's been put into this thus far by myself and my team that's been working on this. The answer isn't a no. I'm not going to say no to that. I'll have to look at it. I'm just concerned. I just don't want to keep moving the goalposts along and to keep going and going with this. So I'm always open to looking at that, and I'll leave it at that.
I can only speak for myself, not all of council, but I guess what I appreciate that there's a lot of things to look at and everything that you just mentioned. But I think I would appreciate you going back to your professionals. I do truly believe, when I read the report compared to the last report and the requests that were put forward, I really do think that you did a great job, and your planners did a great job of making everything work. Everything has gone almost over and above what was asked of you. That one block it would just protect, I just think it would protect the people that may live there, and it could protect the business from being able to continue robustly as they have in the past. And that's all I ask. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. And like I say, I will look at that, whether it's moving lines or moving parking to buffered in such a way. And I guess it's something that I will go back and take a look at, because I don't want to say no and have council,
And that's why I asked at the beginning. I said, I appreciate you speaking on the matter, but we also don't want to put you on the spot and say, oh, make a decision right now.
Right.
So I think unless council has other items they want to discuss on this, it sounds like maybe we should just defer it for the time being to allow you to have those discussions and then come back. And, if at that time you say, no, it's not viable, I'm going to go with what's been presented, then council can make that decision at that time. That way we're not denying it here and just ending it. I'd rather us have that opportunity to see what options there are, if you're comfortable with that as well.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that, because I don't want to come up here and say no, but I can't promise that it will go either way. I do have to look at this and take a good look, because as I said, we've done a number of things to make sure that it's right, and it's something that I'll have to explore, and I will explore further, and hopefully we can do that in an appropriate turnaround time so that things aren't delayed.
Okay, I appreciate that. And so any other members of council have other questions to Councilor Desjardins? Did you want to?
Thank you. Through you, it's just kind of a tag on to what Mr. Reno said about putting the parking in the middle, because you could still keep your commercial at the top. And then there's that 70-meter buffer that comes down around that corner. If the parking could go in right, up a little bit. If you could put the parking in the middle between the commercial and the apartment buildings, maybe that would work well for everybody as well. Again, just a thought process.
Thank you. And I know these are thoughts, we're not planners, so I know you may be looking at us going, these people are crazy with this thought, but at least we appreciate you entertaining it and looking at the options. Like I said, the last thing we want to do is this not move forward. We want to make sure that you're able to move forward with your development, but we also want to protect the industrial site that's currently in there, as well as future residents. So that's why. So if council doesn't have any other questions at this time, if we want to have a motion to defer it and bring it back. Yep. So Councilor Reno and Councilor Desjardins, all in favor? That carries. We're also, since we're going to defer that item, we're going to defer, when we get to it, I guess we can speak to bylaw 8861. So that was the bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 8600, the town's comprehensive zoning bylaws amended. Correct? Do you have Ms. Beggs?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I may, I think the request is reasonable that we go back with Mr. Ublansky to entertain perhaps reconfiguring Block 52, but I do just want to inform council that the property is designated residential, the property that he's looking to develop. So it's always intended to be developed residentially. And through the planning process, we, undertake different study requirements to make sure that those safeguards are in place. And then those recommendations through the different studies and reports are integrated into the approval. So if and when it does come back, I just ask that council be mindful of the fact that it is designated in a residential fashion and that we have done our due diligence to ensure that the lands are protected.
Thank you, I appreciate that. All right, so we will move on then to item 2, which was the 2024 mill and pave contract, unless, did you want me to vote on that bylaw? Are we good? That's okay, okay. Okay, so we'll do the 2024 mill and pave contract award. Council, any questions? Administration? I'll turn that over to Mr. Capucci.
Sure. Through you, Madam Mayor, members of council, the report. Actually, I do have some slides. They're not going to be all in the right direction, so that's going to be, you'll notice, but that's my fault. But so the 2024 mill and pave contract went out, and we received 3 bids for it, the lowest being Millam, and their price is very fair and consistent and within budget. This year, we're doing Matchett Road, as you can see, another area off Mayfair, and another area on the northwest corner of Laurier and Matchett, which includes Lafferty, Superior, and a few other streets. So we review a bunch of streets within the town, and we look at the classification of roads, conditions, the proximity of all the roads we need to repair, traffic conditions, as well as other infrastructure work that needs to be done on those roads. And that's kind of how we came up with our list to complete this year. So based on that, we're proposing these roads here, and the construction schedule is supposed to start after school because Mayfair does have a school on it, so we don't want the construction to interfere with any school traffic. So it should be about a month, so it should be done within the month of July and completed before August is the rough idea for that. So if there's any questions from from council, I'm happy to ask.
Thank you, Mr. Capucci. Councilor Renaud?
Thank you. My question has to do with a report that was, I think, 2 or 3 meetings ago. We talked about Broderick Road and how that might be based on a 2-year allotment of mill and pave. I don't recall, did we have a year that we were looking at? Is that next year, the following year?
Yeah, that'll be 2025.
Thank you.
Yep.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, and I believe this is going to go probably to the Finance Department as well as you, sir. With the increase in the cost of gasoline and having had that wonderful chart that showed the increase in the cost of asphalt vis-a-vis the cost of gasoline, are we able to make sure that I understand how many kilometers we're doing for what we are getting? I'm sure there's a ratio from years past. If you have that number, I'd love to make sure we understand what the cost of the increased cost of fuel is doing to our mill and pave, as I understand that petrochemicals are what we use to do it. So I'm just looking for, off the top of your head, if one of you has a ratio or a number so that I can better understand what the cost of the increase in fuel is doing to our mill and pave program vis-a-vis the number of years we've done in the past.
I don't have an exact calculation or ratio, but I can tell you, from 5 years ago, the same amount of money would have gotten a heck of a lot more kilometers of road as compared to what's being done this year. We can definitely see the effects of the rising prices, and this is directly related to the price of oil for sure.
Thank you, Worship. It wasn't meant to put you on the spot. It was just meant so that folks can understand that the cost of fuel vis-a-vis the amount of mill and pave we're able to do, there's a direct proportional correlation between the increase in the dollars, the cost of a barrel of crude oil, and the amount of road we're able to do. So whenever it's appropriate, sir, if you could calculate that number, don't need to have it in a report, just to be shared for our consumption. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments? So the recommendation before us is that the report of the manager of engineering dated PW 5/2024 regarding the 2024 mill and pave contract award be received, and that council approves the award of the mill and pave contract to Millam Corporation for the bid price of $1,109,952.23 plus HST, and that this amount be funded from the 2024 mill and pave project as part of the 2024 approved capital budget. Move Deputy Mayor Akpada, support Councillor Desjardins. All in favor? And that carries. Item 3 is the Huron Church Road and Sandwich West Parkway signal installation, and then back to our Manager of Engineering, Mr. Capucci.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This report is for Huron Church and Sandwich West Parkway. The project there is to install new signals, as well as doing some lane reconfigurations and trail connections and sidewalk connections across that intersection. We recently, through a development, have extended that 3-leg intersection to a 4-leg intersection. So based on the classifications of the road, the traffic, the growth in the area, we will need to improve that intersection to signalize, which has always been the plan whenever that development and whenever that road went through. So we are here today looking to complete that project. The tender went out and we had 6 very competitive bids. I think the difference between the first and second was around 4%, so it was very competitive. Amoco Receipt was the lowest bid, so administration is recommending that Amoco, we've signed the contract with Amoco and proceed with the work. The one thing I do want to note is this work was because of growth and is funded through development charges. So in the original budget, we had about $500,000 to do this work, which was roughly 2020 numbers. Again, we were talking about increased costs. Today, to do the work, it's around $860,000 to complete this work with a $90,000 contingency amount. So the reason for the increase in that cost was the inflation, is the increased cost in construction, because when you look at the numbers, they are very tight, and it's consistent with other signalized projects within the city and the county. So administration is recommending that we go forward with this and fund the additional charges through the DC account. And I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Members of council, any questions? Councillor Desjardins?
Thank you, through you. This is near a school. It says that the work would begin late spring and take approximately 4 weeks. Can we hold it off till after school, like till the end of June, so that we don't have to worry about school buses and little people?
We can do that. I'm assuming that the contractor would want to go out there. This type of work would involve, we wouldn't be closing the road here for this kind of work, so we could have both happening simultaneously. But if the contractor's available in doing that and it doesn't affect the cost, then I'd be happy to make that accommodation, no problem. Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I had a question from a resident about what is the AODA standards, because they'd obviously seen this and just wanted to make sure that they understood what the AODA standards were. I do, but can you explain it if the resident's watching so that they can understand why that's on your blueprint, sir?
Yeah, so those are for the intersection controls and the wheelchair ramps. Those are mandated to have certain tactile strips, certain slopes, certain widths, everything so that all bodies are able to use the intersection wheelchairs at any age and ability. So the reason why that's there is it just kind of shows that this intersection will have and will maintain the proper AODA standards, which we are responsible to follow. And this intersection you're going to have east-west multi-use trail as well as sidewalk and north-south bike lanes. There's going to be a lot of pedestrian connectivity at this point, so we wanted to highlight that as a priority. So,
Thank you, Worship.
Any other questions? I have one. Is this intersection 100% Town of LaSalle or is any of it County of Essex?
I think it's 100% Town of LaSalle. I believe the border is just south of this intersection. But it's a county road. It's confusing to everyone, but that's,
Well, just when
Yeah.
I'm looking, sorry, when I'm looking at the budget and I see we're responsible for the entire cost of this project, knowing it's also a county road, I assumed that they would have been part of that conversation, but because we own the intersection.
That's right.
They are not liable to pay anything for the improvements.
correct. And they were involved in the designing of this, but yeah, they're not responsible as per the agreement. They're not responsible for this, this intersection upgrade.
Thank you. Interesting. Yeah. Well, okay. Any other questions or comments? There being none. So the recommendation is that the report of the manager of engineering dated February 23rd, 2024, regarding the Huron Church Road and Sandwich West Parkway signal installation be received, and that council approves the award of the infrastructure contract to Amoco Infrastructure Incorporated for the bid price of $858,333 plus HST, and that this amount be funded through the Development Charges Reserve account.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Burns, support by Councilor Reno. All in favor? That carries. Bringing us to item 4, which is Front Road Storm Master Plan, which is stage 1. It's the detailed design assignment, and that's our Director of Public Works, Mr. Osborne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. This report is to request the approval to assign the detailed design engineering work of the stage 1 area on the DMAF project to Stantec Consulting for $1.4 million, $1.432 million. The stage 1 area is between Ream Road and Gary Avenue. It consists of 2 pump stations, storm sewer replacements, and a more detailed look at what overland flooding issues we might have on Senator and Juanita. So Senator and Juanita are part of this area, but there's no construction work as part of this contract. We need to look at that area a little closer to see what is actually feasible or what's not feasible on those 2 specific streets. So again, this is for the detailed design work, just the next step in this overall DMAF project, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Members of council, any questions regarding Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, and I'm sure you know this answer, Mr. Osborne. A resident who lives in that area had seen this and just wanted to better understand if we didn't do this, they having gone through some of the flooding that occurred in that area and having had some of their property underwater, if we don't do this from your technical perspective, sir, what do you see the outcome of this area being if we don't move forward with this plan as proposed?
Thank you for the question. We would have a higher risk of flooding in the area if we don't move forward with the project, which at the moment doesn't seem to be too bad with the lake levels, but someday I'm sure they will come back to what they were a few years ago. And also, related to the DMAF grant itself, we've, signed an agreement with the federal government to do this project and receive that funding. So not proceeding would, I'm not sure what the impact of that would be, but probably not good.
Thank you, sir. I think that's what they wanted to understand, was it was grant funding from the Fed, and if we don't move forward, not being a lawyer and not looking to legal counsel for advice, but there might be liabilities on the behalf of the municipality if we don't move forward with the grant money that we've received for this flooding project.
Okay, Councilor Burns.
To Jonathan. Jonathan, so on Juanita and Sunnyside Lane and that area, it was Project 13 back, 25 years ago. Will you still, with this project, eliminate the need to have a pumping station down there? because we didn't proceed with it. And it was the last of a pumping station to pump and hook those things up to sewers.
So, thank you for the question, Council Byrne. So both Juanita and Senator are on sanitary sewers, and Sunnyside is not on sanitary sewers. Sunnyside is not a municipal right-of-way. It's a string of private properties, really. So I'm not sure why exactly, but that might be part of the reason a sanitary sewer didn't go down there. This project is specifically to do with storm and storm sewers. And the reason that it's, we're looking at these two streets specifically without putting in design work for storm sewers and pump station is because if the overland flow issues are too much for us to be able to fix, if it's too many, if water's coming across private property all over the place and we don't have the ability to go fix that, there's no point in putting in storm sewers and storm pump stations because they'll be overrun and won't be able to really do anything. So that's why we have to look in a little more detail on the grading really around the area to see if it's even feasible to be able to eliminate the overland flow and then potentially put in a pump station and storm sewers. But maybe hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? The entire project, how many phases, stages is it?
3 stages. So there's this stage. The second stage is what we call the Marintet drain area, which along Front Road is not a long section along Front, but extends fairly far, like inland, so to speak, a fairly large drainage area that way. And then the third stage is basically south of the Marintet drainage area, all the way to the south limit of town. And in that area, there's, I believe it's 9 or 10 or 11 individual storm outlets along the way down there, including a few residential streets on the west side of Front Road.
So when we're talking about stages, stage 1 is to be 2025 and likely into 2026. When are we looking at completion for the entire DMAP project?
I believe we're supposed to be done by 2028. I think that's the year. So we're going to continue through the environmental assessments on stage 2 and stage 3 as best we can. And the actual construction work in stages 2 and 3, I don't believe are as extensive as the construction work in this first stage. So I think this will be a fairly good chunk of what we're doing. But we really have to work through those EAs to better know what we're doing in stage 2 and 3. So, it could end up being tight, but we've also had some conversations with the federal government and, that there's potential to potentially extend that date as well if needed, but we haven't quite gotten to that point yet.
Because they had a completion date of 2028, right? That was what they originally asked for. So my question is we have an idea of the expected cost of the project, and we know it's 40% that's actually going to be covered. And we also just said that everything continues to rise in cost. Is there any way to lock anything else in ahead of time to try to secure some of those costs, even though we may not be doing the work until 2027, 2028?
I don't believe so. I don't think there's any way to really do that without knowing, we don't know the details of what we even have to do in those sections, so. Not to mention, I don't think you'd actually get contractors to lock in prices that far out. That would cost us anyway to do that, so I can't see that being a viable option.
So I guess my only other question is, at what point do we have to look for an extension to make sure that we can get it? As I'm assuming there's a time frame we know we'll need to do this in?
Yeah, I don't know the exact timing, but we myself and Mr. Ferraro meet regularly with the government, the federal government, regarding this project. So they've been good to deal with, and they've told us, we're not anywhere close to needing to request that. What we want to do is work through our EAs to better know exactly what we're doing. And then if we do need to make a request, we can make sure it covers everything we need to cover.
Thank you. No other questions? So we have a recommendation that the report of the Director of Public Works dated March 12, 2024, regarding the assignment of the detailed design and engineering work for Stage 1 of the Front Road Stormwater Master Plan be received, and that the assignment of the detailed design and engineering work for Stage 1 of the Front Road Stormwater Master Plan be given to Stantec Consulting Limited for a contract value of $1,432,200 plus HST. Moved by Councillor Reno, and I need support. Support Deputy Mayor Capata. All in favor? And that carries. On the consent agenda, there are 2 items. Anyone want to pull anything out and speak specifically to it, or are we okay to approve both items together? We're good? So if I can just get a motion from members of council. Councillor Desjardins, move. Support Councillor Reno. All in favor? That carries. Committee matters. We have the Essex County Council highlights for February 21st, 2024, and that the recommendation is that the items be received. Are there any questions on that item? Just a motion.
Motion to receive.
Councillor Burns, support. Councillor Reno, all in favor? That carries. Questions and statements by council members? Any tonight? None? We're moving into notices of motion, where at the last meeting I did put in a notice of motion, so I'm going to hand over the chair to Deputy Mayor Acapata to read that motion and speak to it.
The notice of motion before us today reads that Mayor Meloche may move or cause to be moved, whereas the council recognizes the importance of community events within the town of LaSalle and for the greater Windsor Essex community, and whereas the council respects the collection and use of property taxation, the council's obligation to be fiscally responsible, and whereas the town of LaSalle has a policy which does not permit the waiving of fees, be it resolved that in recognition of the importance of the 2024 Play for a Cure event, which is held at the Volmer Recreation Center, that council authorize a one-time payment in the amount of $2,500 or some other amount in support of the event, and that these funds be drawn from the Mayor and Council Program Services Grants account. Madam Mayor, it's your motion. Would you like to speak to it?
So the motion we've been requested to, in the past, reduce fees, which is something we don't do in the town of LaSalle for any of the events, as it's obviously something we can't pick and choose who should be waived fees. And so we've been very persistent with keeping the same thing across the board for all users. However, Play for a Cure was brought to us several years ago and has been very successful and has done a lot of great in the community, and we'd like to see that event stay in LaSalle, as it does support our local businesses as well as families, giving them an outing. Which is why I put that motion before us today as a one-time grant, and like I said, it's not a reduction of fees, it comes from the Program Services Grants account. And I can answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Looking to my members of council for next steps. Councillor Desjardins.
Thank you. Just a quick question. In the amount of $2,500 or some other amount, do we know what some other amount might be?
I was leaving that open for discussion with members of council to know we have a budget that we have to stay within the year. So I wanted to have that conversation with you to see a number that you felt was appropriate. The event is held I believe it's 3 days now. Am I 3 or 4? Is it 2? Could be wrong. I'm unsure of the exact number of days now, because I know it runs for like a week of events, and then some of it's in LaSalle and some of it's in the city. But I wanted to look at an amount that would support the event on a whole without reducing fees. They use several parts of the facility over the weekend. So I'm more than open to any item or number members of council would like to support this evening.
I would make a motion to grant the amount requested.
There's a motion on the floor. It's moved by Councillor Burns. I'm looking for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Reno. With the motion on the floor, we're going to vote on the motion. All in favor of the motion as proposed? Anyone opposed? That motion is carried. Madam Mayor, I cede the chair back to you.
Thank you very much for supporting that. Just a reporting now of our closed session. So on February 27th, 2024, council met in closed session to discuss a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality. At the meeting, council directed administration to proceed with negotiations on a property located on Beach Lane. We will now move into bylaws. The bylaw 8823 being a bylaw to provide for the repair and improvements of the Chappus Drain in the town of LaSalle in the county of Essex, be given a third and final reading and adopted as amended with the revised schedule of assessment dated November 7th, 2023. So if we can deal with that one first, as that one is be given a third and final reading. Councilor Desjardins, support. Deputy Mayor Capata, all in favor? That carries. And then we will be giving the following bylaws a first, second, and third reading and finally passed. And we'll start with 8862, which is a bylaw to authorize the execution of a developer's subdivision agreement with 2601370 Ontario Incorporated. 8863, a bylaw to authorize the sale of part of an alley system closed by R1409588, Registered Plan 794 LaSalle. Bylaw 8864, a bylaw to authorize the execution of amending agreement number 1 to the transfer payment agreement for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program between the Corporation of the Town of LaSalle and His Majesty the King and Right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Transportation for the Province of Ontario. Bylaw 8865, a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement between Milam Corporation and the Corporation of the Town of LaSalle for the 2024 Road Rehabilitation Program. Bylaw 8866, a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement between Stantec Consulting Limited and the Corporation of the Town of LaSalle for the detailed design work of Stage 1 Front Road Master Drainage Improvements Project. Bylaw 8867, a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement between Amico Infrastructure Incorporated and the Corporation of the Town of LaSalle for PW 10 2023 traffic signal design here in Church Line at Sandwich Parkway. And then finally, bylaw 8869, a bylaw to authorize the purchase of part lot 30, concession 1, Sandwich West, parts 1 to 8 on 12R 2498 LaSalle for Randy Kelch. So those will be given a first, second, third reading and finally passed this evening. Councillor Reno, support. Councillor Burns, all in favor? No opposed. Confirmatory bylaw is that the confirmatory bylaw 8868 be given a first, second, and third reading and finally passed. Deputy Mayor Capata and Councillor Desjardins, all in favor? That carries. Schedules of meetings, we do have a change. The Police Service Board meeting is now March 25th at 5 p.m. Accessibility Advisory Committee, March 20th, is changed from 3 p.m. to 10 a.m. Committee of Adjustments, March 20th, 5 p.m. Water, Wastewater Committee, March 26th at 4:30 p.m. And then our next regular council meeting is March 26th at 6 p.m. And please visit the town's website for more information and schedule of meetings. Thank you for joining us in person. It was nice to have people here looking at us this evening. And thank you to anyone who joined us online. Have a good night. Meeting adjourned.